Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming in today. First of all, I know there's like 2,000 sessions going on right now and tons of activities. So really thank you for coming here, making the way over here and sitting in on the session here today. My name is Jordan Spires. I lead our cloud alliances over at New Relic. And we have a pretty awesome presentation here for you today. I'm not going to lie. We really wanted to put together some content here that would really, speak to kind of all skill levels here and really kind of go through different business units. Really want to make sure that we go through, a lot of great use cases here. I'll kick things off today. I'm going to talk a little bit about New Relic and some of the trends we're seeing in observability today. Keep it pretty high level. Talk about best practices and so forth. But then I'm really excited to be bringing up one of our strategic partners, Cloudaware, to talk a little bit about what they're doing right now, the Observable Enterprise, and then really excited to bring up Sam from New York Life, one of our joint customers, to be going through the customer use cases we're doing with them today. And then finally, we'll end it up with a demo as well. So lots of great activities going on during this next hour. Stick around. We should have time at the very end. We'll also do Q&A for any questions that people might have. So I'll go ahead and kick things off here. So real quick, give a high-level elevator pitch here of New Relic. If you haven't heard of us before, New Relic's mission really is about making the change from traditional thinking to really driving those data-driven insights that are going to drive business outcomes for your customers and for your business today. We're empowering engineers to build more perfect software through the observability space by putting all of your data in one place at one predictable price, purpose-built observability across your ecosystem with no host or application behind, no engineer without visibility, and really driving that observability at scale across your business units. So what are the objectives of observability? Why should we care about observability? It's really just about having that visibility as developers and operators for your applications, being able to really have that end-to-end visibility across all these applications. So your cloud journey, cloud journeys, they come in all shapes and sizes, but there's always going to be one constant in any cloud journey, and that's going to be change. And there's always going to be ups and downs. There's going to be upticks. There's going to be downtimes within a cloud journey. And so observability is going to be able to provide those insights, those analytics, to give you that confidence to make code deployments and infrastructure changes so that you can see the impact of these changes and not have any downtimes. And it's really creating that operational excellence that's going to drive business outcomes. That being said, the landscape is changing today when it comes to transformation. Gone are the days of just the standard lift and shift migrations. There's no more just kind of one size fits all. Here's the playbook. This is how it's going to work. It's about seeking that modern transformation. What are we going to be doing to really modernize this transformation for our business today? And so, there are many treatment plans that can be applied to a platform. So how do customers rationalize their estate and make the right decisions? And how do customers maintain that visibility of these workloads once modernized? Well, it's actually quite simple. It's really about starting early. The decision-making process needs to start early when you're thinking about these cloud transformations and modernizations. Customers need an accurate assessment of their estates as early as possible with discovery, planning, and business cases, and really thinking about that end-to-end journey, right? From start to finish, and then post-migration, thinking about building that holistic view of their applications, dependencies, and integrations. By modernizing applications are different to monoliths, and a different set of tools can be required. It's not necessarily one size fits all, it's thinking the end-to-end journey. So this brings me to one last sort of New Relic pitch here. Here at New Relic, we are partner obsessed. in order to drive our customer success. And obviously, we're all in on AWS. You're going to see us all across, the expo floors. We've got sessions here. We've got technical integrations. We've got certifications with all things AWS. But we really, truly rely on our partners, our strategic partners, and creating that three-way partnership to really drive customer success. We feel like that is the best way that we're really going to truly understand the issues that the customers are seeing today, that they're facing today, and how we're going to solve for them. So with that being said, I want to put my money where my mouth is here and actually invite one of our strategic partners out with our customers. So I'm very excited to bring up Mikhail, who's the general manager from Cloudaware, who will also be joined by Sam, who's the corporate vice president of enterprise commuting services for New York Life Insurance. So thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Jordan. How's everybody doing? So thank you for the clicker. So very, very happy to see all of you here today. Congratulations on making it to day 2 of reInvent. I've been coming to reInvent for, I think this is either my 10th or 11th reInvent. And the first time I came to reInvent, I did not make it to day 2. So you made it. Doesn't sound like an accomplishment, but it was. So what are we gonna, Sam, you wanna say hello to?
Hello, Sam Brindley from New York Life Insurance. Thank you for having me. United States is up 1-0 here at halftime, so thanks for coming here, Noah.
Excellent. So, so Sam and I have worked together for more than 10 years, probably, or at least known each other for quite some time. And what we want to share with you today is a story of what we have learned taking New York Life is a Sam, how old is New York Life?
176 years?
176-year-old company. It's a very conservative company, not very, but so Sam represents the generation of engineers and IT leaders who are taking it to the future. And so today we're going to share lessons with you about our journey of taking New York Life to AWS with New Relic. And essentially, the starting point is this, let's see. Well, that's not the starting point. The starting point is, imagine this. You have the most robust cloud offer, which is Amazon Web Services. You have the most robust monitoring platform, which is New Relic. Can I see a quick show of hands, like how many people are already using New Relic or are well familiar with New Relic, just so I understand? Okay, so like a good about maybe 40, maybe even 50% of people are so New Relic is an observability platform. It has pretty much the most comprehensive observability platform, not just for Amazon Web Services, but it does cover every AWS service. So basically, what we're going to talk about is we have the best cloud, we have the best monitoring platform, we have a 175-year-old company. What's the day 2? Okay, you've got the best tools, but can you do something productive with it? Can you achieve business goals that Jordan was talking about earlier? And so, wanted to also briefly mention Cloudaware. Cloudaware is a cloud operations center that has capabilities around managing inventory. It integrates with AWS and other cloud providers. It has a lot of automations. It's basically the center for your modern cloud operations practice. Basically, if you're familiar with ITIL, Cloudaware is a reincarnation of ITIL, but adapted for a modern world. And so we're going to talk about essentially this concept of observable enterprise, Sam, right? And in order for us to get to the observable enterprise, I'm going to come back to this slide for a second. There are 3 things that we need to establish. We need to build trust, reduce noise, and increase coverage. If we fail at those 3 things, if we fail at even one of those things, then the whole mission fails. And the way that we get there is by integration, automation, and governance. Sam, those are concepts that are very dear to your heart. In order to build trust, in order to create an observable enterprise, can you talk a little bit individually about why are these important concepts?
Yeah, so a lot of times when people come to me and we look at a product, particularly when you start to operationalize it, I always say there's actually a fourth here, but we'll stick to the three, but automate, integrate, secure, and govern it. So obviously automation, as resources are deployed within your environment, you want to know that they exist. From the integration standpoint, Cloudaware has existed almost as a data lake for us. So it goes out and it discovers things from AWS, Azure, from New Relic, and it's able to put these things all together and more or less align the attributes from all these different data sources. So you have that holistic governance, presence. So you're able to more or less understand what's running in your environment. Is it covered? Does it have, is monitoring in place, compliance issues? Really, anything that you can attribute to your platform.
Yeah, so things like inventory observability and adoption coverage. Sam, how large by now, approximately how large is New York Life's AWS environment? How many accounts, instances do you have?
I think we're almost at 500 AWS accounts. We do use a micro-account strategy, so we try to allocate an application to a set of accounts, 4 SDLCs, dev, QA, stage, and prod. So within those 500 accounts, we probably have almost 4,000 EC2. We're starting to get comfortable with EKS, but just that comfortability pattern that goes along with that. And then, really from there, we're leveraging more and more services as they get released and approved.
So typically, right? So this is a very important subject. Is this enablement, right? If I have 1 or 2, maybe a dozen AWS accounts, I don't know, 50 instances, 100 instances, sort of, we think about one scale, basically like discrete things. And we need to deploy New Relic in this manageable environment in a traditional way. It's doable. But then when you're talking about enterprise scale, like at Cloudaware, we have customers that we have a customer that runs 300,000 compute instances, 500,000, 10,000 AWS accounts. And so when we're talking about that kind of a scale, this becomes an issue. Take a look. I took this dashboard from one of our sample customer environments when they started working with us. And essentially, you can see the size of their infrastructure, which is like they have about 63,000 compute instances, and the New Relic coverage. So the way Cloudaware does is Cloudaware talks to both AWS and then talks to New Relic. So we go to AWS and we say, give me all your inventory, because, and then we come back to New Relic and we're like, hey, are you monitoring this? Is there an agent running? What's the version of the agent that's running there? And so this is a huge problem, because if you're not monitoring your entire enterprise, then there's a possibility that you're not, you basically have gaps in your monitoring coverage. So on the enterprise scale, coverage becomes very important. Sam, do you have something to add maybe on this?
Yeah, I mean, the first time anything ever goes wrong, the first thing that I get asked from my leadership is, was it monitored? What was in place? How did you not see this coming? So with this relationship that Cloudaware and New Relic have, it gives us the opportunity to see and observe where the product is deployed, any gaps that might exist, and even when you get into things where you have to update an agent, like Log4j came out, it's able to go in and determine where that version is, and then we can go in and reconcile it and make sure that that vulnerability is clear.
Sure. I also wanted to go back to this slide for a second, and I wanted to tell everybody that sort of we're going to spend the first another 20 minutes of this presentation in kind of this interactive mode, and then the second half of the presentation, we're actually going to do like a technical, almost like we're going to use some Terraform to deploy some alerting as code. So if this is like too businessy content, hang on for the second half. There's going to be more technical. Or, just basically, I forgot to mention this, and I wanted to bring this up. Absolutely, right? So the first question is, why was this not monitored? Right. And that's the question number one. And then the other one is also agent version tracking. New Relic has a great security track record, but for example, imagine Log4j or Java that was recently compromised in Log4j. Tracking what versions of the agents we have deployed out there is quite important. This is just another example of, in this case, tracking basically this problem with adopting enterprise software on a large scale. It's not specific to just New Relic or monitoring. You will run into this issue with other tools as well. So like, let's say we're talking about Tenable or Cloudaware as your vulnerability scanning solution. Deploying it on a large scale is also challenging. And so I just wanted to cite another example of where this is relevant. And this is what, basically like I took this screenshot sometime after Sam and I had worked together. And you can see that we've made a great progress in achieving a much higher level of New Relic adoption. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about, well, Sam, maybe you want to mention a few things about this slide. Like, what does this slide like represent to you?
This goes back to the integration. What I was talking about before is where I look at Cloudaware as a data lake. So you see the various data sources. You see even in the top right corner, some of our on-prem infrastructure from VMware is now ingested into this data lake. Third-party integrations with thin clients and VDI instances and things like that. Obviously, he was discussing vulnerability management. We're able to allocate the vulnerabilities that exist within the environment to the resources they live on, because again, this central integration hub that ingests all this data. And then I could go around the hub here as well. But we are still, with this data lake, we are still a ServiceNow shop. So in order to accommodate those ITSM functions at ServiceNow, obviously I'm sure many of you know well, it does populate those tables for your change, problem, incident management. So like I said, Cloudaware is my data lake, my source of truth when it comes to what I know is in the environment. But as you perform those ITSM functions, that ServiceNow is obviously very capable of handling.
Yeah.
We rely on that integration there as well.
It's interesting. The way I like the way Sam thinks about coverage and New Relic deployment, for him it's like a governance issue. Basically, if New Relic is not deployed, if it's not you think of it as a governance function that New Relic is supposed to be deployed.
It's almost a compliance issue.
It's pretty much a compliance issue.
Yeah.
So next we're going to talk about the integrated ecosystem, and it's very important to have this integrated ecosystem, and I will explain why. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this slide. So let's say that we've made a little bit progress. On day one, we've had the best cloud, the best observability platform. We've got New Relic deployed everywhere. We are monitoring everything. Great. Something happens. We have an outage. Something breaks. The very first thing that is a calamity begins because all of the business stakeholders don't necessarily understand what's going on. They're getting multiple alerts. They're not sure which applications are impacted. It could be an outage specific to your organization. It could be that Amazon is having an outage with one of its services. And so the very first thing that's very important for us is to basically build trust with our stakeholders. Essentially, even if we monitor everything, the way business looks at us, we need to communicate efficiently back to our business stakeholders and saying, this is the place where you come in, this is the state of our, like they don't care about what we have alerted, what we have configured. What they want to know is that we are on top of things, so that the information technology is on top of whatever the outage is happening. So how do we communicate to the outer world? Don't worry about it. Yes, there is an outage. Yes, we're working on it. This is what's happening. And this is the impact to our business. And the way that we do this is, we consume two data sources. On one side, we consume AWS's Health API. A Health API, for those who are not familiar with it, is an API which you can query what is the if Amazon is having an outage, either with a service or a specific resource. Let's say you have an instance that's running on degraded hardware, you have an entire RDS in a specific region is having issues. How do you articulate that information? Say, remember the Cogito outage? It's not a good place to bring up AWS outages, but when the Roombas stopped working and the Ring doorbell stopped ringing, this had a massive impact on New York Life, that Cogito outage, right?
It was 3-4 years ago, I think, right about this time of year. It's Thanksgiving, I believe.
Yeah, it was, and it caused a calamity, right?
It caused a calamity, and we had, we weren't quite ready. It's kind of what spawned this, but
yes.
We kind of understood that we needed service mapping as the new catchphrase at New York Life. And we want to understand like what the various services and their dependencies are, and just so we can reflect and communicate what the actual impact of the business is.
So what we did is we essentially consume New Relic data. New Relic is telling us what is the current state of our resources, databases, load balancers, instances, EBS volumes, and inside Cloudaware, we map every resource to a business application. We're saying this guy, this load balancer, this database, this Dynamo belongs to application 1, application 2, and then we're consuming resources from a health API. And that's very important information because we can correlate the two data sources and we can present picture to the business saying this is how application 1 or application 2 is performing right now. And the stakeholders, everybody can come in, and if they're impacted, they can subscribe to their applications, and any kind of updates that are being made in your incident management, like PagerDuty or ServiceNow, they get propagated to this status page. So my point with the status page is this. Even if you monitor everything, but your customers, your internal customers, don't understand the fact that you are monitoring everything and you're not communicating this effectively, you might as well not. Nobody will appreciate your work unless you communicate it effectively. And so see here, we basically look at all the services and we know the state of those services using the Health API and using New Relic telemetry. And then we can advertise this and show what this builds trust. Okay, and so that's that aspect. Next thing I want to talk about, saying, let's say that you're communicating trust, you're monitoring everything, but something went wrong. And so typically monitoring systems, they are concerned, they're infrastructure-centric. So if I get an alert from CloudWatch, if I get an alert from New Relic saying that something is wrong with a certain resource, that is actionable, right, Sam? But that's not enough. That's not enough data to really act on it in productively, so to say. So we have this concept of enriched alert metadata. Can you talk a little bit like why is this useful? Why is this useful at New York Life? Because it was your idea.
It comes back to what is the impact given whatever the resource, what the application, whatever the condition is. So yes, I mean, we leverage a few products to do this, and with the ecosystem that we have between Cloudaware, New Relic, and even PagerDuty's in there to an extent, it allows us to do the enrichment on that. And really, we're moving through the whole. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this as well, but that traditional mode of operation to that DevOps shift left, and we're kind of in that weird area right now that you have to accommodate the old way of working while trying to bring the new way working up to snuff. So with this enrichment, it allows us to go through and determine, is it an application level? Is it something to be sent to an SRE team? Or is it something from a traditional level? Maybe a Linux server ran out of, its fan broke, I don't know, and that still happens on our site. So where does that enriched data trigger the event to be sent to the right place and then communicate it to the business?
Fantastic. Yeah, I love because a typical monitoring system, it will tell you like, hey, instance ID 123 is kaput. Okay, fine. It's not a very actionable information for me. So what we did is we added this metadata that before the incident goes into an incident management, we add extra fields to that alert. What app ID is impacted? How do we know what app ID is impacted? Because we know the resource that's impacted. And if we know the resource, then we can tell which application is impacted. We're looking at the type of an issue. Is this an operating system? Is this an infrastructure issue? We look at category. We look at subcategory. Do we need a DBA? Or do we need a Linux admin? Or do we need a Kubernetes expert on site? So basically, this rich metadata makes alerts much more actionable. And what this allows us to do is to reduce the noise, because everything is actionable. And if it's not actionable, then you know, basically, like, you know, maybe it's a false positive. But the idea is that everything is enriched and it's impacting something, and it allows us to do filtering, prioritization, routing, and most importantly, impact assessment.
So even the auto remediation that we're just starting to cross into, we got a lot of self-healing opportunities that in the next month or two we're about to launch. So I mean, same thing. It comes from this data, so you make sure you have the right triggers in place that go ahead and execute whatever that remediation job is.
Yeah, for sure. If you're thinking about like, you know, like introducing this discipline of what's called AI ops or automation, you know, auto remediation, your auto remediation algorithms are not going to be able to be effective unless you have this enriched alert metadata. And so I just wanted to put it out there. And so we're getting to the getting to the automation part, Sam, and you have mentioned shift left. I did not know until like I knew what shift left is like for 10 years, but I didn't know it's called shift left until like 6 months ago, that there is an actual term for it. Does everybody know what shift left means? Because it's kind of like a wishy-washy term, but it's powerful. Sam, tell us what shift left means.
Well, again, it's, you know, we're going from that traditional operating model to trying to empower our engineers and our developers to be able to go through and, you know, CI/CD, deploy things as often as possible. So I'm trying to empower them to take over all of this, where it used to be a centralized team that built in your monitoring. You go through, you know, various tickets and this, that, and the other thing. What we're trying to do is have it automatically, have New Relic automatically get implemented through a Terraform vending machine, we're actually referring it to. So you deploy an EC2, it automatically grabs that Terraform code and goes ahead and orchestrates the deployment of the New Relic monitoring as well. And then, you know, across all the services, that's just the EC2 example. So, but really trying to empower the teams that build it, to run it, to own it, and get rid of that centralized requirement of the traditional teams.
Yeah, I mean, I remember this. This is when I started out my career, the monitoring, the ESM teams were a very centralized bureaucratic thing. You would provision the infrastructure, and then you interact with a monitoring team, and they're like, okay, sir, how would you like this to be monitored? You know, where do you want your CPU alarms set at? And then you're like scratching your head, what if I get it wrong? So, and then, you know, kind of there is like the age of automation. We were all excited about Puppet and Ansible and SaltStack and all this. And now we're in this final age of, I'm going to introduce this concept that I like. It's called alerting as code. Essentially, alerting as code is the embodiment of this shift left mentality. Is basically the scale of the infrastructure that enterprises have right now, tens of thousands of instances, running this centralized department that handles our monitoring needs is not doable. We're in the age of self-service, okay? So the developers use CloudFormation, Terraform. How many people here are familiar with Terraform? So, okay, and CloudFormation? Okay, those who are familiar with CloudFormation but not familiar with Terraform, sorry if I butcher it, but it's pretty, Terraform allows us to do infrastructure as code, but for things other than just AWS, okay? So, and so it's all about self-service. Basically, on the scale of modern observable enterprise, if we hoard the monitoring and say, this is my sandbox, I do the monitoring for you, you will not scale. Essentially, the function is to create a vending machine service and to enable others, to automate things and to configure their own alerts and things like that. We're going to talk some more about this. Let's see here. So there's two parts to the automation. The first part of the automation is just deploying the agent, okay? And this is something that Cloudaware helps with a lot. We have essentially like an enterprise app store of different agents, including New Relic. So if you have like 50 different versions of Red Hat, CentOS, Windows, and you just need to deploy New Relic and not have to worry about the underlying operating systems, Cloudaware can essentially scalably deploy New Relic for you. As the typical, this is a challenge, is a typical enterprise is going to have multiple pipelines, right? When New York Life is using what? You guys use Ansible, you have some Puppet, you use SSM, you use SCCM.
Yep.
And so hacking every pipeline to get New Relic installed on it is a little bit difficult. And Breeze is part of the Cloudaware platform, and so we use it to streamline the deployment of the New Relic agent. But the big thing is this, is the alerting as code. So let's kind of like quickly, sort of do a roundabout and talk about alerting as code. Essentially, we used to create infrastructure by hand, right? We would go to the management console and we would start an instance. That was like 12 years ago. Now we use CloudFormation or Terraform to spin up our infrastructure. So it's fully automated, it's infrastructure as code, it's self-service. Beautiful. Now we use like DevOps software, Chef, Puppet, Ansible to install everything we need to install on that server. We get Tomcat, we get Nginx, whatever we need. And then the final step, or one of the steps, is that piece of infrastructure now needs to be monitored. And up until a few years ago, what did we do? We go to New Relic or whatever monitoring system we use, we go to New Relic, and we literally manually click there and set choose an alarm policy and all this. And essentially, the demo that I'm going to do for you now, I'm going to show you essentially how we can treat monitoring and alerting enablement also as part of our DevOps process. Basically, use code to configure alarms, use code to configure. So now, by making it a code, we're creating that self-service model, right, Sam? Because what are the number one complaints that you hear when you don't have shift left? What are the some most common problems that you hear from people?
I think it's just submitting the request, putting the details of the requirements in there, and then.
So bureaucracy, how do you want this to be monitored? And now you don't need to specify, there is no intake, there is no bureaucratic, person you need to answer to how you want this to be monitored. The other one is noise, right? People are saying, I'm getting too many alerts, or this wasn't monitored. We're solving that problem too, right?
Because we have some MVP, obviously, thresholds that come out in the templates that you're going to demonstrate in a little bit. But I mean, the user or the developer can always go in and modify the thresholds that accommodate whatever their workloads, support. So
awesome. So basically, you're putting the responsibility and control in the hands of the developers or the DevOps. We don't need to manually create alerts. And New Relic has jumped onto the Terraform train way ahead of its competition. Their Terraform provider for New Relic is awesome. You can create integrations between New Relic and AWS. I'm going to show that. You can configure, they're called integrations. So right in AWS, we have services, EC2, ELB, DynamoDB, EKS, whatever we want. And so you can turn on and turn off different integrations. You can configure how you want them to be monitored, what regions you want to be monitored. So New Relic's really, that's why we're partners, because they are the leader in the innovations. And okay, let's, Sam, anything else that I maybe forgot to mention in terms of maybe put it in your own words. How transformative is it that the developers have their own access to essentially deploy and configure alerting and monitoring?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's the only way we're going to scale. I mean, we're not, New York Life Insurance, you think it's just insurance, but there's all kinds of other lines of business within there. They all operate a little differently. They have different leadership, different requirements, different SLAs, different KPIs. So we really just need to provide them, what I'm trying to do is provide them the platform to consume, spin up, do whatever they want to do, however they want to monitor it, still within some guidelines that obviously, our requirements demand, but yeah, really just try to help the business scale as necessary.
Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to do a little a demo is essentially, and what I want to show you is this, right? So this is what typically happens. So you log into your New Relic, you go to AWS, and the very first thing that you will see is your AWS account is not connected to New Relic. So there are two styles of communication between New Relic and AWS. There is the CloudWatch API, and we typically refer to this as the pull method. Essentially, New Relic makes CloudWatch API calls and pulls the data out of AWS. There are benefits to this approach, and I'll talk about them. And then there is also a push approach. The push approach is you expose a Kinesis stream in your AWS, and you essentially, your AWS using a Kinesis stream will push all of the telemetry into New Relic. Okay, both methods. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons, and they also have a cost effect. So we're actually going to talk about the cost impact of New Relic. So the very first thing is we need to give New Relic access to our AWS account. The way that this works is we need to create a cross-account IAM role. New Relic needs to go in there and start making CloudWatch API calls. And so to do this, normally you would do this by hand, but now it's self-service. We're living in the age of self-service. I think I got disconnected, guys. Give me 1 second. Yep. Sorry, let me get back in there. All right. Okay. So now let's say I'm a developer, okay? I just stood up an AWS account, and I want to connect that AWS account to my New Relic environment. The way that I would do this is I would do this through a Terraform. I would do this through a Terraform template, and essentially it would look something like this. So I'm gonna once it runs through, I will show you what's happening. But basically, Terraform automatically creates a cross-account IAM role, and then creates a cross-account IAM role, and then talks to so it talks to two different systems, and creates the cross-account IAM role, and then gives all the details about this role to New Relic, so New Relic can go out there and now start pulling the data. So if I refresh this page now, check this out. Now my AWS account is now connected to my New Relic account. So I took one AWS account and I've connected it, and now New Relic is automatically monitoring all those services for me. So let's go in and take a look at some files in there. Let's take a look here at NR integrations. So check this out. Let's say I'm a developer, right? And I know how I'm going to use this account, and I can choose, do I want load balancers to be monitored or not? Do I want Lambda to be monitored or not? Essentially, I am defining as a developer what I want to be monitored and what I don't care about. This is important for two reasons. Reason number one, this is important is because it has a cost impact, right? A New Relic like any other modern cloud service, is licensed on a consumption basis. The more service you consume, the more money you're going to spend. Same thing with AWS. The more instances you launch, the more money you're going to pay. This puts the control in the hands of the developers to saying, I don't care about monitoring those things because right now I'm developing a Lambda function and I don't need anything else to be monitored. So that's, and then it just basically puts the control in the hands of the developers. And so take a look at this. Let's say, for example, hey, I'm actually not, if I go back here and I go to my EC2 and I see that I click on configure, we can see that it's being monitored in EC2 East 1, in US East 1. I can go back here to my template, okay? And I can change that to say, hey, actually, I'm working in US East 2, okay? I can run a Terraform apply one more time, and we'll let it run for a second. This is just an example of, so our change is done, it has been applied. So if I refresh this, we can see that now it's monitoring US East 2. So it's the fact that I'm just changing, US East 1 to US 2 is not that particularly important. It's just a demonstration of the fact that you have that level of control, that you don't need to ask anybody, that you can just do this, autonomously. And you can enable things. Let's say you're doing some regression testing or you're doing performance testing. You spin up your New Relic, you spin up your AWS account, you spin up your infrastructure, you spin up your alerting, you do the whole thing. Then once you're done, there is no, like, what's the point of collecting that CloudWatch data if you're done with testing? And you just do like a Terraform destroy and the entire thing gets destroyed. The IAM role goes away, the alerts go away, absolutely everything goes away. The other cool thing that I like, let me actually show you this. This is also a very sweet integration, is here we can actually, for every service, we can say, monitor Lambda functions, but only my Lambda functions. I don't care about other people's Lambda functions. And we can actually select a specific key, like let's say environment equals performance or owner equals SAM, and New Relic will gather just the data. So check this out, right? New Relic is like an amazing platform. But if you enable everything, you're going to pay money. But this approach allows you to have like the full awesomeness of the product, but not pay the full price. You monitor just what you want. And that's what I love. It's like you can touch how good the product is without having to pay like, insane amount of money. I mean, it doesn't have to be. It depends on the, I deal with like very large customers that will, if they are not careful about this, their spending can easily get out of control. Let's take a look at another one. Let's take a look here at an example of alerts. So we can, as developers here, we can also define alerts. Here is a very cool one. New Relic has this query language called NRQL. So we can define our alarms as NRQL queries. So this is an example of like an NRQL query. Here is an example of a CPU credit balance. Here's a very simple one. This one says like, hey, if the number of connections on this load balancer is more than 20 for 7 minutes, then do something. So here's what I'm going to do. We can go over here. We can go to settings. We can go to our alerts. If I mouse over this, we can see here that's exactly how it's defined now. Average number of connections is more than 20 for at least 7 minutes. I can take that, and let's say I will change that to 5, okay? And I'll do the same thing one more time. And essentially, that's an example of alerting as code. Like a developer just, hey, you're getting too many alerts? Don't tell me about it. Don't tell Sam about it, because Sam's got like, bazillion developers. Go ahead and change it yourself. Don't like the fact that it's not monitored? Well, go and monitor it. And so we provided a lot of cookbooks and a lot of examples for everybody for this.
Yep.
Awesome. OK. Let's talk about, I want to go back. I promised you I will also, well, let's let it run. Has anyone here familiar with New Relic Kinesis style integration? OK. Some people? Nobody? OK. So nice. So CloudWatch is a pull mechanism. So New Relic is the main actor. And so using the CloudWatch integration, it comes in and pulls the data out of New Relic. You're going to be paying for two things. You're going to be paying for New Relic ingestion, and you're going to be paying Amazon for CloudWatch API calls. The more stuff you monitor, so you're paying two different providers. One to store your data and to process it, and the other one to give it. And then there is also latency, right? CloudWatch operates at like the best, I think, is 1 minute or 5 minutes, right? So we have latency with CloudWatch. By the way, let's just very quickly go in there. I'm going to refresh this page, and we will see that it's now at, and then the Kinesis is a different beast. But my favorite part about CloudWatch integration is that the CloudWatch, using the CloudWatch, the pull method, we can pick and choose specifically which things we want. So very pinpointed. But on a large scale, could be expensive. You have to do your own analysis. The Kinesis is different. The Kinesis is essentially a push mechanism. The AWS turns on the fire hose and streams all of your telemetry into New Relic. And in that particular case, you cannot pick and choose. You're getting the entire, every single telemetry from everything you are essentially, it's streaming into your New Relic. The advantage is, there are two advantages. Advantage number one is you're getting real-time telemetry. Essentially, as soon as AWS has it, it gets streamed into New Relic. The advantage number two is you're no longer paying to Amazon for CloudWatch API calls, okay? And your ingestion to New Relic is about the same. The disadvantage is you cannot pick and choose. You're getting everything, and then if you don't want it, then you don't want it. So that's the difference between the push and the pull. And this is something also that the developers can control inside their Terraform. So we can inside this file configure whether we want the streaming method or we want the API, essentially push or pull. And for the last thing, we have about 11 minutes left. I'm going to do a Terraform destroy. Because and then by the way, before I destroy it, let me show you this. We can go here to AWS. And if we go here to account status dashboard, we can see the telemetry for the things that we have selected is starting to arrive. And pretty much whatever we subscribe to is what we are going to we're going to get to. The other also important thing is here I can also add managed services. Is I want you to take a look at this screen, because I think that this is also where New Relic absolutely blows all their competition out of the water. Is they have integration for just about every AWS service. One of the things that you will say is like other vendors will say, oh, we also support AWS or blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, can you monitor EFS? Oh, no, you can't. You don't know how, you can't monitor DynamoDB. And so this is and all of those things can be enabled just like I did through code, okay? So that's a very awesome feature, and they're staying up. They're keeping up with AWS very well. So as they're rolling out new services, they're instantly monitorable in New Relic. I really like that. So I'm going to do a destroy and watch what's going to happen. I love the messages here. It'll be saying like, destroying, destroying, must destroy. And then we're going to do Q&A. By the way, if anybody wants to chat more about status dashboard, enriching metadata, talk to Sam. We're going to be hanging out at New Relic booth, okay? We're going to be hanging out at New Relic booth on the expo hall. And then tomorrow morning, New Relic is hosting breakfast from, I'm going to share the details. And then after breakfast, we're going to stream the keynote. So if you don't want to go to keynote, or like you don't want to go to keynote, come have breakfast with us, hang out, and then we can watch the keynote together. Or we can watch soccer, whatever, we can vote. All right? So that's done. I can go back to my here, and then I'll go back to AWS and refresh this. And then that's it. It's just like it never happened. So, and that's the beauty of alerting as code. So that's kind of the prezzo. That's what we wanted to share with you, just to kind of summarize. Is build trust. Know people that you know what you know. Let your stakeholders know that you are on top of things. Automate things and integrate across, because monitoring does not exist in a bubble. Has to be integrated with your asset management. Has to be integrated with your incident management. Has to be integrated with. Sam is a big believer in integrating, not creating silos, and obviously automate. That's the biggest message, because on a modern scale, you're not going to get anywhere without automation. Okay.